Well, you first saw the Ultraviolette F77 in 2019, and it's been a long time coming, where we finally see the production version with a lot of new upgrades. And joining us is Narayan, one of the co-founders at Ultraviolette. Thank you so much, Narayan, for joining us.
Pleasure having you over today.
Firstly, congratulations. We've seen the production version. We've seen a lot of upgrades that have come.
Right.
We spoke earlier this year, and you told us that there were a lot of things happening.
Right.
But you've really set the benchmarks in a lot of ways. So
Right.
let's quickly get into it.
Sure.
Big upgrades to the chassis, to the engine, in terms of the motor,
Right.
the drivetrain, and even the battery.
Right.
So, how did we use the pandemic downtime
Right.
to really upgrade these bits?
So when we unveiled the vehicles in 2019, that was around November. I think we are exactly 3 years removed from that point. And we were good to go into production, initiate the production activities. But then there was no visibility into when we come out of the pandemic.
Right.
One is coming out of the pandemic in terms of the lockdowns, etc. Two is when the industry sort of ramps back to speed. So there were two different curves that we were tracking, right? And when we didn't have a strong view into this, we thought, okay, next 1 year, let's not think about production. Let's think about what all we planned for Gen 2 of the F77 and see how much of that we get into Gen 1.
Right.
Now what you're essentially seeing is Generation 2. It's taken us a good year and a half of back to the drawing board, R&D. You mentioned the chassis, the swing arm, the motors, all of that. We've gone deeper into minute elements like things that were already functional, like the transmission. Like the reason we spent a few months on refining that is to make sure it lasts you, or like you own a bike for a decade, right?
Right.
It needs to last you that sort of usage cycle. Talk about how do you optimize the sound to be very close to what we represent as the sound of electric, right? So all of that happened, and most importantly, the batteries. When we last met in Mumbai, we spoke about 20-25% increment, and that was what was tested at that point. This version was still under test, and I think last week is when we got the final numbers that we could speak about publicly.
So let's come to the battery itself.
Sure.
It's a brand new pack from what I understand, aluminum casing. So I know the safety standards are something that you guys are now adhering to as well.
Right.
But the big change is 100% increment in range from 150 that was promised in 2019. It's now 307 kilometers on a single charge.
Yes.
What went to achieving that?
So back to the drawing board. One is we were using 18650 cells, migrated to 2170, which meant the whole architecture had to change. That's when we sort of got a lot of queries and questions and suggestions and feedback.
Right.
150 is good, can we get to 200? So then we were thinking, why not? Why not think about if we're redoing the architecture, can we push to 200? And that also coincided with the time where we wanted to ramp up on the safety side of things as well. So the packs that you earlier saw was safe from every sort of standpoint. But what you see here is 2.53 mm casted aluminum across the entirety of the pack. So not only are we accounting for internal safety and thermal management, also from external crash cases or faults that the battery is still supposed to be integral through. So.
Right. We obviously have to talk about the fires that happened, and it just kind of brought a sense of darkness over the electric mobility space at large.
Yes.
I know there are changes made to the safety side of things as well. Could you elaborate more on how you managed to ensure that there is better safety in terms of thermal efficiency?
Right.
And how do you make a battery less vulnerable to temperatures that it has?
So a lot of this was accounted for in our previous batteries. We hadn't spoken about it, our bikes weren't out there yet at that point. The fires that you see, I would attribute a lot of it to the manufacturing process and the consistency. What you get certified on day one versus what you sell in your 100th and 500th vehicle.
Right.
Is it the same consistency you maintain, or is there a drop off in that? I think a lot of it comes to that. Cells inherently can operate on any part of the earth. Right. I mean, cells are, the separator between anode and cathode are meant to survive 120 degrees, right? So hottest climates on earth are 50, 55, 57 degrees. So it's less of that and more on manufacturing quality. And I think that is also where, you're here today, not doing an entire facility tour today, but a lot of that has been factored in, which also goes back to limiting first year's production volumes.
Right.
You were asking us earlier, why don't we scale rapidly from the get-go? The answer is the same. We want to establish a very strong template for not just the battery, the entire vehicle assembly line itself, and then get that right over the first, say, 8 months or so, then ramp up production post that.
Which brings me to 24th of November is of course when you launched product.
Right.
You are still keeping a lot of technical specifications under wraps.
I think just the final data points are under wraps. I think most of the tech specs we've discussed and disclosed today. So
Yeah, but we do know that the motor makes about 33 bhp
Right.
power. Do those numbers stay the same now?
yes, more or less the same specs that you heard about.
How much do we see a change or an increment in terms of performance now that you have a lighter chassis? And I think the overall weight has also dropped.
Weight has gone up because the batteries have increased. I mean, we've used a lot of aluminum here. The number of cells have gone up in the batteries. So the weight has gone up, which is also why we needed to counter that with optimization on the chassis.
Right. But again, the swing arm is all new.
Yes.
Let's just dive into a little bit of that and what prompted you to actually redesign the whole thing.
So goes back to our DNA of what are we making? Is it a commuter? No. Is it an excellent sports bike that can also be a very cool commuter? Yes. So that meant getting both characteristics right. So the earlier swingarm was doing its job, but then what we sort of invested time and effort was our testing team giving feedback to R&D and R&D acting upon that to make sure so we would take the older generation of swing arms, weld a few members here and there, ride it for a few 100 kilometers, get that feedback, analyze the characteristic, weld a few more ribs here and there, get that back. Then all of that slowly looped back into the R&D to what you see as the final casted swing arm here.
Right.
So it was about, like, we have one shot at making a statement, and that statement is like nothing is perfect, but how close can you get? That was our endeavor.
No, so obviously the pandemic period and leading up to now has been about 2.5 years. How many years in total have you spent over the F77 in terms of development time?
We started the company formally 2016. First 1 year went into understanding the market, understanding the space. We were clear that it has to be an emotionally connected product, which ruled out scooters.
Right.
Also, we've all grown up as kids aspiring to own cool motorcycles right from when we were in, third, fourth grade all the way to college. So that emotion is very strong, and India is a very unique market that way, right? You see the mid-segment performance motorcycles thriving here.
Yeah.
Every manufacturer has like at least a couple of products in that segment. So we narrowed down to this, something that could be a very strong, emotionally appealing product. Very new and cutting edge in terms of both design and technology as the layers over that.
Let's talk also about the pre-orders. I know the official pre-orders begin, but you've already had a backlog from 2019.
Yes.
That includes Indian customers as well as customers internationally.
Right.
So how do you plan to address that once the launch happens?
Sure. So once we unveiled the bike, we had pre-order interests open up on our website. This gave us a very good view into which parts of the world, are appreciating what form of technology.
Right.
And we are like super excited. 190 countries today have expressed interest in purchasing the F77. Like not possible to get to 190 countries, but what we're looking at is India, US, Europe as targets we would like to get it to, say, within the next 24 months.
Interesting. What about the plans of expansion within India? I believe the first experience center is coming out in Bangalore, which
Yes.
is also where HQ is based.
Yes.
What's the expansion for other cities like?
So that exact rollout plan we'll sort of get into details on the 24th. But we will have a measured rollout plan that ties in with service availability. Right? It's not too hard to ship a vehicle to someone in Jaipur or Kanyakumari or any part of the country. But our promise, every other company, if you think about it, the association with the OEM ends at the point of purchase. Right? Because usually it's a dealer system and there's a disconnect between the company and the consumer because of the sort of system that comes in between.
Right.
So we want to flip it the other way around. Our engagement starts the day you start using the vehicle. That means service and accountability has to be there. And our rollout plan, of course, is not going to be, it's not going to take too long. I think we're working on a service template that can be available in multiple cities before the bikes are available there.
But it will be a staggered delivery experience in terms of Bangalore gets it first, then other cities get it.
Yeah.
That's how you plan to do it.
But staggered, not in a linear way, staggered in more of an exponential way.
Right.
Can we do 1 city, 3 cities, 10 cities? That's sort of a goal we're working towards.
And what's the timeline in terms of expanding to newer cities? Do we see that happening in the next 12 months?
For sure.
And how many cities do you plan to target?
I think we have a plan of another interesting thing from all of the interest that's coming in. It's not just tier 1. Like there's unanimous interest from all categories of cities and towns in India, right? So it wouldn't be too fair to give an exact this thing of available only in XYZ cities. But maybe the experience zones could be in these cities, but could we amplify availability through other means? That is something we're looking at.
You know, obviously, talking about the product itself, in most cases, what it happens is that you have a promise and then you see the product, but deliveries is something that we haven't seen happen.
Right,
Delays, eventual delays happen.
Right.
Obviously, we know what the industry is going through right now in terms of supply constraints.
Right.
What is your timeline in terms of deliveries, and do we see that happening in 2022 calendar year?
Yeah, I think we are gearing up for delivery starting this year in Bangalore. And then I think we discussed the whole rollout plan before that, right? So, quick answer, yeah, we want to target deliveries this year.
Where are you in terms of production at the moment? Is trial production has begun, I believe. When does series production?
It has in some way or form already begun.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of operational, logistical aspects we need to sort of figure out. And yeah, so all the bikes that you see on the, I mean, you don't see them now because it's inside, but all the lines in our plant, the bikes coming out of the lines are roadworthy right out of the gates here.
So what we see today is by and large the final spec of the world bike we get.
Yeah, yeah.
And how many variants do you plan to get?
Two variants. Range is one differentiator.
Right.
There would be a few other features that are differentiators as well. But essentially two variants that sort of take care of like a wide spectrum of usage and consumer needs.
Are you, we spoke earlier and you said about 15,000 units is what you plan to do in the first year. That's also
Right.
what your production capacity will look like.
Yes.
What kind of pricing can we expect with the F77? I know it's a month early.
Pricing is a month early, like you said. In 2019, we spoke about 3.5 lakhs in terms of the price points. And you would know everything, raw materials, commodity price points, everything has gone up 15-20% in the last 24 months, right? So we'll factor that in, make sure it's competitively priced. That's as much as I can reveal right now.
All right. On that note, Narayan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to ride it whenever you
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time.
Cool.